Hello, I'm Andrew Butler from Hercules Love Affair. I'm here to talk about my collaboration for the Valentino Le Club Couture show that took place in Paris.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. Could you please start by introducing yourself briefly, please?
Well, my name is Andy Butler, and I have a musical project called Hercules Love Affair. That's what I'm, I guess, known for, and the reason I'm here today. I'm an American musician that was, born in Colorado, spent most of my life in New York City. I've been studying music and writing music since I was a kid. And the past couple weeks, I got an amazing opportunity to make the soundtrack for a Valentino haute couture show.
How did you get into fashion in the first place?
I actually accidentally fell into fashion. When I finished university, I was interested in fashion from the time I was probably 17, when I first saw a W magazine in my mother's bedroom, and two models that I'll never forget, Guinevere Vancinis and Amy Wesson, were on the cover. And I stole that magazine, and I remember thinking, these women are so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And in university, I studied music, and I studied dance and things, the arts in general. But after university, I didn't know what to do. And a friend basically offered me an internship at a fashion agency that represented fashion photographers, cutting tear sheets and putting portfolios together. And from there, I just started to sort of pick up different jobs in fashion, but related to music. And then a professional career started in my later 20s as a musician solely.
So how did the collaboration between yourself and Valentino come about?
Well, to be honest with you, I started off the year at a meditation retreat, and I thought, I'm going to have a very quiet year this year. And an email came into my inbox from Valentino asking if I would be interested in a project. And of course, for me, seeing the name Valentino, I kind of was just like, wow. And we just started talking about the possibility of creating a soundtrack for something that was a vision that Pier Paolo had in mind for his new haute couture collection. And they thought of me, and the vision was a very specific one and a very exciting one. And so after a few meetings, it seemed like, yes, let's do this. Let's collaborate and make something special happen.
So what was the vision? How did it match kind of like your own creative persona?
Well, Pier Paolo, first of all, is an incredibly down-to-earth person. So at least my sense of him immediately was like very comforting. And he communicated to me, how much he loved the fact that, so much is expressed in nightclubs, so much in terms of freedom, liberation, self-expression, and real, truly beauty is expressed in nightclubs. And I think he had seen a documentary about the Blitz Club, and it was in his mind. And I relate to that very much so. As a teenager, I was really dressing up, going out to the nightclub as early as I could. That desire to bring that boldness and self-expression that is experienced in nightclubs and has been for decades, and the relationship between musicians and fashion to the runway, it made a lot of sense to me, and it was something that it's something I know,
we can talk about a little bit more precisely about the show from yesterday. So as you said, it's really kind of honoring and celebrating club couture, like club culture, into a haute couture setting. It was a really stunning collection, a lot of red, sparkle, really kind of festive overall. How do you feel about it?
I was blown away by the show that he presented. It was really the marriage of club and couture, it's a challenging prospect. And when it was brought up and when he suggested it, I was like, okay, interesting. You're going to bring couture to the club and the club to couture. It will be very interesting to see. And the harmonious and incredibly refined collection that he put forward was it was incredible. I mean, you had that elegance, which is expected, and that sort of elevated couture element. But you also had this incredible boldness with these colors and the sparkles and the casting, everything. It was a tremendous show. I mean, from a visual perspective, I was really just very taken by it. To hear a song of mine, or a couple songs of mine, actually soundtrack the show or be something of an anthem for the collection, it was quite kind of surreal. I mean, I had to pinch myself. For me to see that synchronicity, when you see music and the visual element come together in such a way, which I think it worked really, really, really well. For me, it's just so satisfying. I was incredibly honored. I was moved, and I don't know. I just I was I'm a bit speechless.
So how did you match the music to the different moments? Did you have access to the collection beforehand to prepare the soundtrack?
Valentino was incredible in that they sent me mood boards. His vision was very clear, I did definitely get visual cues. And it's not an easy task in the sense that, a fashion show needs dynamic. And in the nightclub, dynamic is trickier. There's a steadiness sometimes that exists in a nightclub. People want a pulsating rhythm that doesn't stop. And with a fashion show, you really do have to create drama and dynamism, So that was something that we had to work on. And that actually Pier Paolo was very instrumental in helping me evoke.
Mm-hmm. What was the atmosphere you were going for? What kind of vibe, what emotions did you want to convey and kind of generate into the audience?
The emotions and the energy that I wanted to kind of communicate with the music for the collection was definitely something that I've always strived for within my own songwriting. Quite a few of the songs that were played on the runway were songs I wrote. And elegance is something that I try to pursue in my music as a songwriter. So elegance was something that was key to the soundtrack. And the other thing that was very important to me was a certain edge, of course, because the nightclub is where people exist on the fringes. This is where, that boldness, that self-expression, the unexpected takes place. So I definitely wanted to impart some amount of the unexpected, brightness, a lot of color in my music, if you could talk about color in music. I just a certain energy, definitely a pulsating, engaging energy.
If Maison Valentino was a song, what would it be?
One of my favorite. I'll choose one of my favorite composers, like perhaps a Philip Glass or someone like this, but even more romantic. Something by a late romantic classical composer like Scriabin. Someone who was on the cusp of modernism, but leaving the romantic era in classical music. If I had to choose something modern as a song for Maison Valentino, perhaps something as beautiful and elegant as Kate Bush.
So I know you mentioned it briefly already, but now what would you say, what is clubbing to you? Why is that important for us and to the world?
I think clubbing has offered so many people refuge. There are so many different kinds of people on this planet, and a lot of us have struggled at points to find a place where we belong, and the nightclub has, for many, many people, offered that space. When we talk about boldness and self-expression, like Pier Paolo's vision, it's not something that many people can walk around necessarily in their everyday life, just feeling confident, doing. And so the nightclub offers this place to escape and be yourself in a different capacity. As equally as important as clubbing right now in this moment in time, I think self-reflection is very, very important. So I think it's an important balance. Clubbing is a beautiful and incredible thing, but the importance of introspection, self-reflection, and self-realization is as equally important. And I do believe that can start to come and does happen sometimes for people in the nightclub.
But do you remember the first time you ever stepped into a club?
My first clubbing memory was at 15 years old, and it was a club called Rock Island, and a wonderful DJ was playing there, who in a way, that first experience very much inspired my last record. It was at a moment in time when what would be played on the dance floor was everything from New Order, Bauhaus, early techno, very early techno, like Warp Records, LFO. You had a new beat being played. You had industrial music. You had new wave. You had all kinds of music being played, and that was my first experience. And so this, you talk about eclecticism and boldness. That was my first experience, and I'll never forget it, and people were dressed in such amazing looks, like it was in the early 90s, and I was around. It was so freeing and beautiful to see people who were genderless, appearing genderless at that time, and just expressing themselves in a way that I knew that they could not express themselves in that manner at their household. This was the safe place for them to be able to express themselves, and that it was fabulous.
So you really talk about these clubs as these hubs of expression and creativity, kind of almost in a historical sense. So would there be any clubs now that kind of pop into mind as places that you think are like that, like your kind of favorite places that you would go to maybe seek some inspiration of something like this?
I'm more oriented towards DJs who select a very inspiring mix of music, but in terms of clubs at the moment, in South America, a lot of interesting movement taking place. There is a wonderful group of kids in Chile called Aerobica. There is in London, we have there's like a sort of resurgence of just a focus on that fun and that boldness. There are many clubs that inspire me, but it's more focused for me around DJs that have that bold selection.
I was just wondering, is there like an anecdote or maybe like something that happened in the preparation of the show? Because I know that, of course, creative endeavors are full with small things that happen. Is there something that you would want to share specifically?
I would say the most special thing was there were some serendipitous moments. This line of communication between Pier Paolo and the team and myself around the selection of music, some strange moments happened. There was a song that was suggested that is a classic called Fade to Grey from Visage. Then they also asked for a song of mine called Painted Eyes that I wrote in 2011. It just so happens that when I wrote that song as an homage to Visage, Fade to Grey. So the connection just happened to be there, Then Pier Paolo suggested to put in a beautiful song from Anthony and the Johnsons, also known as Anoni, called You Are My Sister. And it made so much sense because it was a duet with Boy George, who was one of the Blitz kids. So there were these things, like these subtle things about the whole collaboration, which just made it feel like there truly was a glue, taking place. Something happened that made this cohesive, and it was inexplicable almost. So I think that would be my answer.
So as a final question,
Yes.
Andrew, honestly,
Yes.
give me your honest opinion. Do you think the world just needs to dance more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the most liberating things I think a human being can do. The body is, we're so gifted and blessed to have these bodies that we're born into, and to use them and express the way that one can through dance. We're really lucky to be able to do it. So yes, we should all dance more.
Thank you so much for coming, Andrew. It was a pleasure to talk about your work for Pier Paolo's latest collection. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure to talk about Pier Paolo's latest haute couture collection.